There's a new range of functions available in Power BI that lets you do visual level calculations. Now, we are going to have a look at one of them, the window function. Now, the window function lets you do a calculation over a certain window. Now, if you already have experience with Tableau or maybe SQL, then this type of function rings a bell. Now, in this video, we're going to have a look how to use it in a practical setting to, for example, calculate a moving average for a visual like this, or to have a dynamic reference line per section for a visual like this. Now let's see how to set it up. Let's get started. Welcome to How to Power BI. My name is Bas, and if this is the very first time for you visiting this channel, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all of my videos in which I share everything I know about Power BI. Now let's have a look at this new window function. Now we're going to have a look at two examples. The very first example is to calculate a moving average, and the end result is going to be a moving average line like this one, and we can determine the number of periods over which we're going to calculate that average with a nice little slider. Now, the second example that we're going to build is to have a reference line for each subsection of a visual, like we have over here in this visualization, where we have a reference line that shows the average for each year. All right, now let's get started with example one. Now, what is a rolling average? A rolling average is just an average calculated over a certain number of periods. Let's say we have this little table over here where we have the total sales by year and month. And I want to calculate a 3-month moving average. Now, what would be here, for example, the 3-month moving average for April? Well, we could take the total sales for April and the previous 2 months, so March and February, and over these 3 months, so February, March, and April, we would calculate the average. And that is then the 3-month moving average for April. Now, basically, that is our window, February, March, April. And therefore, this new function is called a window function. Now, let's see this in practice. Now, let's start by inserting a new measure. And we're going to call this measure total sales 3-month moving average. So total sales 3MA is equal to, and here we just write the function window. That's going to be our starting point. Now, you see there are a lot of different arguments from type, to type, relation, order by, blanks, partition by. Now, the very first thing that I did is just open the documentation. But to be honest, with this explanation, I think it's still a little bit overwhelming. However, it is actually relatively simple. So let's go back to Power BI. Now, the first thing that this window function needs to know is where does your window start and where does it end. Now, here we're going to have a 3-month moving average. So we are going to always go 2 months back from the current row until the current one. So the current value we want to include. So the from value is going to be -2. Now, I'm going to split it up into multiple lines. So let's do Shift-Enter to go to the next line, and right here, -2. And then we have the from type. Now here, we need to go for relative, because it's always relative to the current data point. We want to go 2 back from where we are at the moment. That is where your window starts. All right, so -2, relative. Now, then we go to the next part. 2, we want to go to the current data point. So a 0. And also this is relative. Now, the next argument is called relation. And I think that the name is maybe a little bit confusing. However, what we need here is a table from which we will get the output. Now, here we want to have the total sales by year and month. So one function that we can use is called summarize. Now, the summarize function, like the name suggests, summarizes a table by the columns, well, that you specify in this function. So the table that we want to summarize is going to be our dim date table. And we want to summarize that by the year and by the month. And let's also include the month number, which is the sort by column of month. All right, now let's close summarize and let's close the window function. And there you go, we already have our window function, but what does it actually return? Now, let's go here and look at the description. Now, retrieves a range of rows within the specified partition. So we have the rows that fall within the window that we specified here. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to calculate the total sales for every row. Here, 3 rows. And then over these 3 values, we want to calculate the average. Now, we can do this with iterator functions. So the function that we need here at the beginning is an average x. Now, the first thing is a table. Well, there you go. That's the window function over here. And then we want to have the total sales for each row. All right. And once we have the total sales for each month within the window, we want to calculate the average of these values. Okay, so that's it. Now let's see if this works by adding a measure onto our table. And it doesn't work. Okay, so I forgot something. Let's go back and see what we forgot. Now here, you see we use the summarize function. And what does the summarize function do? Well, it summarizes the table dim date by the year, month, and month number. However, I forgot about filter context. Now here in our visualization, we always have as our filter context, well, the year, 2019, and then the month. Now, what we still need to do is remove the filter context using a function like all or all selected here for dim date. So I need to wrap this inside of an all selected function. Just like this. Then let's go back and ta-da, it seems to work, but always do a quick check. So for example, let's take June, 19.8 million. That should be the average over the 3 values for June, May, April, but they are all higher than 19.8. That doesn't make sense. Now, there are 2 important things that you need to know when you work with these window functions. The very first thing is partitioning. And the second thing is how you number the rows within each partition. So the sorting. But we didn't use the partition by argument and the sort by argument. Well, if you leave the partition by argument out, then you have one big partition. And inside of that one partition, here all of the years and months, well, how do you sort these rows? Well, my expectation at the beginning was by month number. However, that's not happening. Here, it's probably sorted by month name. So the first row in the partition would then be April, and then the second would be December, okay? So we need to do something about the sorting of these rows in the partition that we have, okay? So let's go back to the window function, and we go here after the summarize argument, and here you see we have the order by argument. Now, the order by argument, now the columns and order directions used to determine the sort order within each partition. All right, now let's make use of this one. The very first field that we're going to sort by is going to be the year, and we want to have it in ascending order. And then we're also going to sort by the month number, and also here, ascending order. Okay, now that's it. Now let's see if the result makes sense now. I'm going to go back to my table. Let's double check June again. You see now we have here 21.3 million. Which is indeed the average if we take these 3 values for April, May, June and calculate the average over them. All right, so now we got it to work. Okay, and what about the January and February values? Now here you see that for January, the value, the 3-month moving average value, is the same as the total sales because there are no previous 2 months, okay? And then it just takes the average over a window that's, well, has only one period, which is January 2019. And then for February, it's also not that we have the complete period there. We only have the January and February value over which it then calculates the average. So if you don't want that and just prefer to show a blank, then you first have to count how many months you have, how many periods you have. Is that enough to cover the whole window? And only then calculate the total sales 3-month moving average, or the moving average, okay? Good, now let's take what we have and turn it into a nicer visualization, which we can do just by taking a table and clicking here on a line chart. Now here in the line chart, you see that the 3-month moving average is a smoother line that gets rid of some of the seasonality and maybe shows more of an underlying trend in your data. Now this depends, of course, on how big the window is that you choose. Now let's update the formatting a little bit before we move on. So let's go here to format. And then here under lines, there I'm going to go for, let's say, a dash line, but only for the total sales 3-month moving average. And then I'm going to make it gray. All right. And to take this visualization one step up, what would be nice is if the end user could choose the window size over which we calculate the average. All right. So how can we do that? With a numeric range. So let's go here to the top, modeling, and then new parameter, numeric range. Now the name for this parameter, let's say number of months. And then here we have the minimum 0, maximum 11. So the current month, 0, 11 months back, that's our period, the maximum period, let's say. Now, increment 1 default, let's say we put that at 2. Slicer, let's insert that one straight away as well. And that gives us a new numeric parameter that we can use. Now, there you go, we have a slicer popping up here. I'm going to take it and let's put it here in the top right corner of our visualization. Okay, now I'm going to put the number of months, let's say to 5. Okay, and then we can go back to our measure for the moving average. Now here, I'm going to not fix that number at the beginning, how many months we want to go back for our window to start. Now instead of that, we just refer to the measure that picks up what was selected for the number of months that we want to go back. Now, how do we know where that is? Well, here we have that new parameter, number of months, right? And there's a measure in there that is called, well, number months value. Okay, and that's it. That's the only change that we need to make. And now everything is nicely dynamic and the user can pick the window size. So I'm going to move this first all the way to the left and let's see what happens. Now you see it exactly overlaps the total sales line because, well, it's a window of that just includes the current sales. And if I move this one to the right, you see it gets smoother, 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 and smoother. It gets rid of some of the seasonality. And you better see then the underlying trend. Now, maybe also a good idea to not start at 60 million. Maybe we start over here at the y-axis at 0. Let's see how it would look like then. And then here we have to put the maximum up a little bit. Let's put it to 30 million for now. And there you go. This is our final visualization where we can play around with that total sales moving average line. Of course, I should rename it and not call it 3-month moving average, but just moving average. Okay, now example number 2, which is this visualization over here, which shows a reference line for each subsection. Now here, that is for each year. Now, how can we do that? Again, with a window function. As a starting point, let's take the same data as before, and I'm just going to turn this into, well, a column chart. I'm going to get rid of that total sales 3-month moving average, and this is it. All right. Now for this visual, we have to get rid first of here the fixed maximum that I put in before. All right. And now I want to not have a breakdown by month, but by quarter. All right. And then we have to expand down to the quarter level. Now, also there's a filter here. You see, I have to get rid of that so that we have 3 years of data, 2018, 19, and 2020. Okay, good. Now the next thing that we need is a reference line that shows the average. Now that is easy, you might think. You just go here to analytics, and then we can go here to, well, average line, add a line, boom, that's it. We have there our average line, and we can give this maybe a black color so that you see it better. That's it. Now, that works if you want to have the overall average, but there's no way in which I can have the average for a certain window. And that window here is defined by, well, going to be the year. Okay, the year 2018, one reference line for the average of the 4 quarters that fall inside of the year. Same for 2019 and then 2020. Okay, so let's get rid of this. And of course, also here we can use a window function. So I'm gonna go and write a new measure. Now to save a little bit of time, we just copy over what we did before, because we can actually just reuse it and just adjust it a little bit. Now let's rename that measure then. Instead of 3-month moving average, this is going to be our yearly average reference point. Now the structure we already have. So the average X is going to be the same because we want to calculate the average using, well, the total sales for all of the quarters within a certain year. Now, the big difference is going to be with an argument that we didn't specify before, and that is the partitioning argument. Now, you see there's also how to deal with blanks. Now, for now, that's you can only choose keep. The other ones are just placeholders, okay? We just skip that one for now and go directly to partition by. Now, the columns used to determine how to partition the data. So how to split basically the data into separate groups. Now, here we want to do that for each year, okay? So that we have one partition 2018, 2019, and then one for 2020. So we can say here partition by, and then dim date, year. And within each partition, we then have our rows again. Now before, we just had one big partition, right? So and then 12 months, so 12 rows in the partition. Now we have 3 partitions, 2018, 19, 2020. And within each partition, we have 4 rows, quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we always want to start in quarter 1. That is always the starting point for a window. And we go until quarter 4, the 4th row in the partition. And then it's not relative anymore to where we are, for which data point we are doing it. We always start at the beginning till the end of the corresponding partition. So therefore we switch here from relative to absolute. Now another thing that we need to update is that now we don't have a breakdown by month. So the month, well, that's now going to be quarter. Okay, so here we have quarter, there we have quarter number, just like this. And then also here for the order by, we need to have quarter number instead of month number. Not that it is really that important for the quarters, because even alphabetically, it would be in the right order, different from the months before where that wasn't the case. However, I think it's still better to specifically state the order by argument. Okay, now that we have this, let's see if it works. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the visualization, select it, and we need to convert it from a column chart into a combo chart, which is this one, line and clustered column chart. Okay, now nothing changes just yet, but now we can take the total sales yearly average reference measure, and we're going to drag it onto the line y-axis. And ta-da, there you go. We have an average that is calculated over the quarters of the corresponding year. So we have a different average line here for 2018 versus 2019 and 2020. Okay, so that seems to be working. Now it's just a matter of updating the formatting a little bit. So let's go here to format, and then we go to lines, and then over here, well, there's only one line. We want to have it dashed. We want this to be round, and then maybe let's go for stepped lines. That looks maybe a little bit better. And then the color, let's adjust it. Let's make it a little bit more visible by making it black. Now, all of the bars that are above it, maybe we want to give them a different color. Now for that, we need to have a measure. So let's add a new measure for the conditional formatting. And here we're going to call this measure just CF, conditional formatting, and we want to check if the total sales is bigger than, well, the measure that we just wrote, the total sales yearly average reference point. Okay, now if this is the case, then we want to make it light blue or whatever color you like. And if not, then just the orange or the default color that is in the visualization. Now this measure we can now use for the colors of the columns. So let's go here to the column section, click on FX. Then we need as a format style field value. And here we can just refer to the measure that we just created, CF. Okay, you see all of the bars that are above that reference point are in light blue and the other ones are in orange. Perfect. Now that is already a nice visual upgrade. Now, of course, there's much more that we can do here, but that's not really the focus of this video. Now, I hope by now that you understand how the window function works, what partitioning means, what the rows in a partition are, and why the sorting order of those rows within the partitions matters. Okay, now let me know what you think of this new window function. Now, of course, it is just one of the visual level calculation functions. There's also offset, which you can check out in this video over here, where I go more in depth. And there's also the index function, but you will see there are a lot of similarities in how they work, how to set them up. If you understand one, then you probably also understand the other ones. Now, are you already using window functions? Let me know in the comment section below. I personally am very excited to see this development and very curious how this will be developed further going forward. Will they make it even more easier? What new functions that are related will pop up? Well, I'm very curious. Now, if you made it this far into the video, then thank you very much. And make sure to subscribe. It helps out the channel tremendously. And also make sure that you stay up to date on everything Power BI related. Now, if you are interested into learning more about DAX, then maybe you want to check out these videos over here. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you next time.